So tonight, we are so happy to have three amazing creators together to discuss this gorgeous new graphic novel. If you haven't seen it yet, even the cover is just, love it. Lunar New Year love story. Luen Yang writes and sometimes draws comic books and graphic novels. He was named the 2016 Library of Congress National Ambassador for Young People's Literature and advocates for the importance of reading, especially reading diversely. His graphic novel, American-Born Chinese, is a National Book Award finalist and a Printz Award winner. His 2-volume graphic novel, Boxers and Saints, won the LA Times Book Prize and was a National Book Award finalist. His nonfiction graphic novel, Dragon Hoops, received an Eisner Award and a Printz Honor. In 2016, he was named a MacArthur Foundation Fellow. LeUyen Pham, a graduate of the Art Center College of Design, has illustrated more than 100 books for children, including the Caldecott Honor book, Bear Came Along by Richard T. Morris, and the best-selling Princess in Black series by Shannon and Dean Hale. She is the co-creator, along with Shannon Hale, of the best-selling graphic memoirs, Real Friends, Best Friends, and Friends Forever. Her own books include The Bear Who Wasn't There and Big Sister, Little Sister. And in conversation with Jean and LeUyen is Ellen O., an award-winning author of the middle grade novels Haru Zombie Dog Hero, Finding Junie Kim, Dragon Egg Princess, and the Spirit Hunters trilogy. She is the editor of the middle grade anthology You Are Here and Flying Lessons and Other Stories, and her new YA novel, The Colliding Worlds of Mina Lee, comes out on January 23rd. That's exciting, yeah. She is also a founding member of We Need Diverse Books, a groundbreaking grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates essential changes in the publishing industry to produce and promote literature that reflects and honors the lives of all young people. Please join me in welcoming them to Politics and Prose.
So I'm really excited to be here because I haven't seen my friends in so long, and I get to be here in conversation with them. It's like the best feeling in the world. But I'll tell you a little story about Jean. My daughter came to the Gaithersburg Book Festival when I was on a panel with Jean years ago. And I asked her to take pictures of me, your mom, on the panel. When we were done, I got 100 pictures of Jean. And I was like, but what about your mom? Oh, you're just mom. I was like, So that's Jean. And then Luen, of course, how many books are you, have you published now? Say that again? 138. And may I tell you that, when We Need Diverse Books first started, Luen donated so much beautiful art for us to use in our campaigns and our fundraising, and I have always been so grateful. But okay, now we're here to talk about this gorgeous book, and I gotta tell you, I love this book so much, I kind of hate them. It's so good. I'm mad at how good this book is. I can't even tell you, my heart, the whole time I read it, I was just like, I love this book, I love this book, I love this book. So the first question is, how did you come up with the idea for Lunar New Year love story?
Well, Lunar New Year love story is about 2 different holidays on 2 different calendars. So there's Valentine's Day, which is on the Western calendar, Lunar New Year, which is on the Eastern calendar. Even though they're on 2 different calendars, they're almost always right next to each other. Like this year, they're only 4 days apart, and sometimes they're even on the same day. Those two holidays got associated in my head because when my wife and I were dating in college, she really hated Valentine's Day because she thought it was a scam that corporations would use to sell you candy and cards.
She's not wrong there.
It's true, it's true.
Yeah, she's a very smart person. But I wanted to celebrate Valentine's Day with her. So my workaround was to celebrate Lunar New Year with her in this really Valentine's-y way. I would take her out to Lunar New Year dinner, and I'd buy her Lunar New Year presents, and I'd draw these Lunar New Year cards where the dragons were in the shape of hearts, So ever since then, Lunar New Year has always had this romantic sheen to it in my head, and I've always wanted to do something with that. The other thing I've always wanted to do was work with one of my favorite illustrators of all time, LeUyen Pham. We've been friends for a very long time, and we've always talked about working together.
It's about almost 20 years. Yeah, it'll be almost 20 years, right? So I met Jean, can we tell that story about how I met Jean?
Yes.
All right, so it was right before American-Born Chinese was even on the horizon. It didn't exist in any other form than a Xeroxed, copied like bound together, spiral bound together. And this man, Mark Siegel, who is the head of First Second, which is the imprint that does graphic novels for Macmillan, First Second wasn't quite a thing yet, and he was sort of getting like a salon together, I guess that's the best way to put it, where he invited all these Bay Area artists to come out, and all these guys all knew each other, like they all hung out. I'm like a picture book person, right? I do picture books. I didn't hang out with graphic novelists, so I felt like a total imposter at this table, total imposter. But we were at this like Vietnamese restaurant in the Bay Area, and sitting across from me is this goofy-looking kid in a baseball hat and glasses, and he's just like cannot get the smile off his face. He's just like, what am I doing here? And I'm like, who is this guy? And at that moment, Mark's like, this guy is going to blow the face off of the graphic novel industry. And he holds up that bound together spiral version of American Born Night Chinese. And we start passing it around the table, and I'm reading, I'm like, oh, and the question is no longer who is this guy, but where has this guy been? Like, that was the big question suddenly. And
That's not how I remember that night at all. This is how I remember that night. I remember Wynn pulls out her sketchbook at some point and just feeling so intimidated. I remember feeling so intimidated when I flipped through her sketchbook. And then her husband pulls out his sketchbook. And his name is Alex Povelin. He also draws comics. But his day job is at DreamWorks. So he works in both animation and in comics simultaneously. And I thought, man, these two are gonna make like some super powered artist babies, right?
Didn't happen, man. My kids have nothing to do with art. It's pretty sad. Anyway, but it was cool. I just remember from Gene from that night and feeling like, oh man, I really do want to work with him. But it wasn't until I met his wife that I'm like, he's actually really cool because his wife is so cool, you know? Like, you judge the man by his wife, not by the man, seriously.
This is true.
This is so true. Yeah. So Teresa was awesome, and then after that, it's like anytime I get a chance. But like I said, he's a graphic novelist. I do picture books, and it just took forever to find this project to finally come around.
You know, as a non-artist, and they talk about each other like this, I'm the one that sat at signing tables while Jean draws monkey kings in every book and Wynn draws pictures of people, and I'm like, I can sign my name. But one time, Jean is signing, and there's this massively long line, and finally one kid comes up to get his book signed by me, and I was like looking at Jean with the monkey kings, and so I drew a smiley face, and the kid said, "What the heck is this?" Which actually takes me to my question, though. Like, this book is like 353 pages, Wynn. How long did it take you to draw all this art?
I want people to guess. 350 pages. Just to give you a context, I did a book called American Born Chinese that was 200 pages. It took me 5 years to finish. So I like people to guess how long 350 pages took LeUyen Pham. Any guesses? 6 months, 2 years. 2 years. 3 years. 3 years. Go ahead.
About 7 months.
Oh my God.
And just to give you a little more context, American Born Chinese, when I was doing it took me 5 years. I only did the pencils and the inks, right? I only did the pencils. The colors were done by somebody else. But in this book, the pencils, the inks, the colors, and the letters were all done by the same person.
Yeah, I don't sleep.
That is incredible. And your hands, are they okay?
So I gotta say, I think I'm starting to get arthritis. Like, after this book was over, my hands started to cramp up.
Because you tried to draw 353 pages in 7 months.
But I've heard, like, what is it? What's that? The Asian exercise? Tai
Chi.
I'm supposed to do that now. So I've been told by my my back person, do Tai Chi and it should help. So we'll work on it. But no, it's still okay. I can still draw you tonight, don't worry.
Okay, so what was it like working together? I want to know the exact process.
It sucked. He's so not at all. No, can I say?
Yeah, go.
Okay, so Gene is. So I've been doing a lot of books, so you can trust me on this, right? It is not always easy to collaborate with someone. Like, a lot of ego gets involved sometimes in projects, and you know that when you get kind of an insecure writer about their own work, they're going to let out their insecurity on you. And the product suffers because of it. And it becomes a product and not a story anymore. But that did not happen with Jean. Like, Jean was, you get a little nervous because you're like, holy crap, this guy, like, he's such a huge, huge name. And I'm going to make it worse for Jean here. When he gave me the story, it wasn't like he gave me a script. The dude drew the whole book out. He drew the whole, like, and I swear to God, I'm going to release this on the internet. Like, the version that Jean drew, like, he sent it to me. And once you see a Jean book, you can't unsee it. You know how, like, that was awesome? And it sucked because, like, I can't unsee the way he was supposed to do it. And it took me, I want to say, like, I didn't touch the book for maybe 3 or 4 months because I could not get over the hump of your drawings. And it took the longest time to finally figure out what I could contribute to the story. Like, I had to get past my ego to make this work. And once I got past that part, then it's like, there's Jean, the storyteller, there's me, the illustrator, and then there's the book, and it's up here. And suddenly it's like, we weren't trying to catch each other, we were trying to catch the wave of the book. And then it was just great. Like, I would send Jean sketches, he'd send it back, I'd suggest something for the story, he'd suggest something for the drawing. Like, it just didn't matter. Whatever worked for the story was what we went for. So Jean keeps saying, like, that I torture myself, whatever. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it had to be the way that it was. It just, we couldn't do it any other way, and it was great.
They weren't really drawings. It was like thumbnail sketches. I write in the thumbnail sketches, right? So if you look at them, they're not super legible. I feel like Luen is overselling these thumbnail sketches. No. And the thing is, like, so before I did the thumbnail sketch version of the book, I did several outlines of what the story was going to be. And all through that time, Luen and I would have multiple conversations. It was the two of us, and then we also had 2 editors working on the book, Mark Siegel and Connie Shu. And Luen's input, especially at that stage, was super important. Which is why, like, some of the dating experiences that the main character goes through in the book are based on Luen's life. Like,
so, like, our early conversations would be, well, what was your dating life like? And then I would tell him, like, a few random stories. And then a week later, they show up in the story. And I'm like,
they're so good. These stories were so good.
Yeah, it was pretty scary.
Yeah, I'll give you one. There's a scene early in the book, so it's not too spoilery, where Valentina, the main character, goes on a date with her very first boyfriend to a food court, and then the boyfriend gives her a diamond ring. And that actually happened in real life.
Yeah. And I lost the ring too. No, but it's actually really fun because I know, like, I can sort of share this stuff with Jean, and he takes what's like a crazy story and turns it into something like just sort of comic gold, you know, like I couldn't have seen it that way, and I didn't see it that way, and now I do. It's like you rewrote my narrative for me in a really, really cool way, which I love.
It was so funny. Like, no, she's lived a very eventful life, I think. Yeah.
Well, that actually takes me to my next question, because I have to admit, when I was reading the book, every time I read Valentina, I would hear Luen's voice. Mm-hmm. Like, she looked like Luen to me. She was like Luen, like young Luen. This is Luen when she was young. That's how I read the book. So how much of real you did you channel? I mean, clearly Jean was channeling you. So.
Well, I think I wrote a version of the story, and there are pieces of it that just didn't work, right? And like, one of the big pieces that didn't work were the female characters and the relationships between the female characters. So all of that really needed Luen's influence to make work.
It's funny, like when I read the first version, and me and Connie Shu, the editor, we kind of went through the whole thing together, and we realized, like, it needed more of the female voice in there. Because Jean has a particular female friend, like the one girl that only hangs out with guys and, like, smart-assy kind of, like, that girl. That's the girl he writes? Is that right?
Yeah, because that's the girl I knew the best. That's right. The girl that used to hang out with me, right? Right. At multiple friend groups throughout junior high and high school, the girl that I knew the best was the one girl in the all-guy group.
Yeah. Which is why the first time I read the book, I'm like, it's a rom-com. The com is all there, but the rom was missing. Like it didn't have it there. And there were the ways like some of the two main girls talked to each other that like didn't quite ring true some of the time. So Connie and I went through a lot of that, and we would just have conversations with each other, and then I'd put it in and suggest it to Gene, and then Gene would put like his flair on top of it, and it turned into, I felt like a very, like I think I was very, very protective of the Bernice and Val relationship.
I love that.
Yeah, and I really wanted that to represent well. And like, I'm part Val, but I'm also like, as a kid, I was Val. As an adult, I'm Bernice.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? And so those two parts, like, it was fun to insert those two parts into the story and have them kind of, you know, dealing with each other, loving each other, battling each other. And I got to say, if you ever look for it, my favorite drawing that I did in the whole book, I wish I could say that was between her and one of the guys, but it's actually, there's a scene where Val has just sort of been rejected by the guy that she just spent like the evening before hanging out with. And she watches him going up the stairs, and she sort of goes to the stairs, and Bernice comes up and asks her, "Are you okay?" And she says, "I'm okay." And she sits down, and then she says, "Are you lying?" And she crumples, and she says, "I'm lying." And then Bernice puts her arm around her. And those three drawings, like, were my favorite, because I felt like that is very, very indicative of female relationships at that time. And
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Petition for a second book on Bernice, please. I love Bernice. I mean, but in general, these secondary characters were so amazing. They kind of like every time they would show up on a page, they almost tried to take over because they were so larger than life and so realistic, you know? Do you have any favorites? I know Bernice was one of my favorites, but any favorites for you all?
I think Uncle Yun Sang was like became easy for me to write. So I think this happens with a lot of writers, right? You put in lots and lots of energy into a world, and at some point something shifts and the world kind of starts to write itself. And for Uncle Yun Sang, that happened at some point. Like he started to write himself.
He was also really fun to draw, because he's got like a little bit of a belly. He always wears like ironic T-shirts. He's like an artist and everything, and you know, he's
The old fart T-shirt.
the old fart
Yeah,
T-shirt.
I
That
love
was me. That was me. I just love the idea. Anyway, I think probably my favorite character is the grandma character. The grandma character, and I got to say, like, I've done so many books, but I've never done a book with a female or with a Vietnamese character before. And it's not that I don't want to do those stories. I've just never found a story that felt authentic to me, or that didn't feel like I was doing it because I'm a Vietnamese person and they're expecting me to tell this Vietnamese story. This was just a story that had a Vietnamese character in it that worked for being Vietnamese and was great, but there was nothing, no tokenism. There was no, it had to be that way. And that was fun because of the grandma character. And what's funny is, like, I think Gene and I, if you look at Gene's version when he drew it, she rings true. Like, she is pretty much what you wrote. And yet at the same time, I think we both channeled someone we knew to be her. And for me, it was my mom. And my mother is not interested in any of my books. Like, she doesn't know. She can't name any of my books. She knows that I'm an illustrator, and she tells her friends to Google me, and she doesn't even know what Googling is. But so it's a point of pride for her, right? But this was the first time ever I did a book where she wanted that copy. And she is under the misunderstanding that the book is about her. Like, she's never going to read it. Her eyesight's terrible. But I told her, "Oh, Mom, I used you in it." And she heard, "You're in it. It's about you." And the character Val looks a lot like she did when she was younger as well. And her mother was a nun, and there's a nun in the story. So my mother, just flipping through, never going to read the book except for the Vietnamese parts, which are all her yelling at her son. So it's perfect, spot on. Like, my mother loves the book for that. And if you ever do run into her, you just have to tell her, "That's an amazing book about you." And she'll just be like, "I know, my daughter, get this, my daughter wrote it."
All right, Jay is such a lovely character. Gene, when I was reading Jay's lines, it's not like I heard your voice, but I did feel like, you know, he just melts your heart with his vulnerabilities and his sweetness, and the romance is so good. It's just such a good romance. And as somebody who accidentally wrote a romance, I'm so impressed. Like, you captured this really perfectly swoony, sweet romance, and you're a guy. And, I mean, you're clearly romantic, but you're a guy. I mean, please share your secrets.
Gene is so romantic.
I'm not that romantic. I don't know what you're talking about.
Totally. Made all the kids in the school like practically cry over his like romance.
I did tell the story of my wife and I, you know, and I don't know if I probably channeled pieces of that into the story. So my wife and I, we were dating. She didn't like Valentine's Day.
Beautiful.
We dated. She is pretty hot, and she and then shortly after I graduated from college, she broke up with me. She broke up with me for a bunch of different reasons. Like I did not have a good vision for my life. I was very immature, but also she was thinking about being a nun, which is a little rough, right? To date somebody who's thinking about being a nun. And then after that, I had this year where a lot of stuff happened for me. Like I self-published my first book after that, and then I got connected with a group of cartoonists in the Bay Area. I found a job as a high school teacher, which I did for 17 years that I really loved. So my life really changed after I got dumped, and it became like I just felt like it was looking back, it was a painful year, but it was also an awesome year because it kind of set the tone for the rest of my adulthood. And then about a year after we broke up, she called me up and she's like, I don't think I'm going to be a nun anymore. And we got back together, and then we ended up getting married. So that whole experience of like all of the emotional ups and downs, I think somehow made it into the book, right? And I think the thing about Jay is, I think you have to know a level of suffering in order to be able to love somebody else properly. There's like this connection between those two things, you know? Like you have to have like faced tragedy eye to eye in order for you to love somebody else properly.
That's deep. That's really sweet. And then now, when you made the romance, it's so beautiful. The spread, it's romantic looking at the spread. And I do have a question about the lion dance. The lion dance art are my favorite.
Yeah.
It's just gorgeous. I mean, the lion dance itself is such an amazing experience to watch, right? So seeing it in the paper, on paper, you would think you would lose the dynamic aspects of the lion dance, but you nailed it. Like it felt like I was watching. And I guess it was that also having them perform. You were seeing the inside of performers in the lion suits performing it. So that might be why it was so dynamic. But I just loved it. It just leapt off the pages. And I am curious as to why the lion dance made it into the story. I felt like it was very integral. But was that an integral part from the beginning?
It was not. Like I looked back at my very first outline, and lion dancing was not a part of that outline. It came in at a certain point. I think at a certain point we just realized lion dancing is essentially two young people sweating under a sheet. You know what I mean? It's like so perfect for a rom-com.
I take it back about the romance now.
Like there's something intimate about that. And then Luen ended up hanging out with this lion dance teacher who sort of gave this perspective on it that deepened that idea.
There was so I had to do like research for how it works, like the costume and how you fit underneath there and how the head works. So the shifu that we were working with, Mimi from Florida, she recommended someone in San Francisco for us to go visit, this guy named Richard Au. And I got to spend like the coolest afternoon with him and his entire troupe. And he was so generous, like the most soft-spoken, gentle guy, all wiry. Like if Bruce Lee had made it to 55, he would have looked just like this guy, like all just perfect. And he starts to explain to me like what goes on behind the whole lion dance and everything. He gave me every detail possible. He talked about how when you make the costume, it's done in China, and then a priest has to bless it from head to toe. And he showed me the method. There's a specific brush, and then there's like an incense that you put, and it goes from the tip to where the horn is through to like there's the mirror that does the reflection of good luck. all the way down to the tail, through the back, and then to the tip of the tail. And he says, if you don't do that, then it's not a real lion dance. And he talked about everything, like the number of pleats on the pants. I had to be really careful because the front of the lion has 5 pleats and the back of the lion has 4. So we couldn't have moments where they just swap. Like you have to actually change pants in order for it to be accurate. And his team was they were incredible. They showed me how to put the head on. I got to see what the underside was like. They showed me like the practice head that they use, which looks like sort of like the hoop that's in the story. So he gave me all that information. But what killed me was he started to describe to me the power of lion dance. And he was saying, when you're doing it properly, 2 people become one. You become a single entity, a single animal. And the drums that always accompany it, that becomes the heartbeat. So you're following the same heartbeat. And as he's saying it to me, I'm just thinking, this is what romance is. This is what love is. Like, this is absolutely perfect. And I don't think he even realized it. But I came back and I was like all starry-eyed. And I was telling Jean, oh my God, Jean, we got to put the whole speech in the book. And that scene in the middle, like I think when they you see them and the figures turn into a single lion, that was directly because I think we just put in exactly what Richard Al said, like about becoming one creature. So yeah, it was essential.
It's so beautiful. It's so romantic. Like I said, it's so good that I'm so mad at how good it is. But okay, I will tell you, as an Asian American, this book, I want to curse about how happy it makes me. That's how strong I feel. Like this, we don't have this. Like I'm trying to think, do we have anything of this, like love story, Asian American? Am I missing something? Can anyone name anything? Like just like an all-out gorgeous, swoony Asian American love story? I can't think of any. In a book form. I can't think of any, can we? I think this is it. This is the book of our lifetime. I am so happy and proud that this book is out there. I wish I had it when I was younger. I'm so glad that, my kids and the kids now are going to be able to read this. It makes me so proud to be Asian American. And, like we're Gen Xers. We had those moments where we were not proud to be Asian, right? In this country. Yeah. I think this book does exactly the opposite. It makes us welcome our culture, not be ashamed of it, be so thrilled to say we're Asian American, proud to be Asian American. And I think that's what this book means to me. And how does that, like, what about you? That was me just vomiting how much it means to me. What does it mean to you guys?
That warms our hearts to hear that, for sure, Ellen, especially from you. Yeah. It means a lot. It means a lot. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, it's our culture. You've captured it all. It's beautiful. I mean, kids are going to read this now.
What I think was interesting about this was that, like, I want you all to walk away and think, like, yes, Jean and I are supposed to be like Jean or Jay and Val, right? But we're actually the dad in the story. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the age group we belong to. And what's really interesting is that, especially like for this book, like I said, my mother is super excited to be about it, right? When I grew up, Gen Xer, I tried to distance myself from my culture, right? Like, it was hard to be Asian. You wanted to have the curly hair. You wanted to be the guy who, that you didn't stick out in any way. And it's really nice to come sort of full circle. And you've got this new generation of kids. Like, my kids don't have that hang up whatsoever, right? Like, my youngest son, my husband's French, so my youngest son, he looks totally Caucasian. He looks French. But he goes around proudly telling people, I'm Asian. Don't get it, like, I'm Asian. And he plays guitar now, and he goes around telling people, did you know that Van Halen is a quarter Asian? Did you not, like, how cool is that, right? That he's, like, owning that part. And that I find great for this particular book, that generation doesn't have that hang-up. Mm-hmm. And I like that the hang-up skips. And that you can only feel it in the role, I think, of the dad, and even a little bit of the mom. Like, that there's something there that they pushed their parent away, and that they're being brought back. And I feel like, I know doing this book for me, that was what it was with me and my mom, was I was able to get past 14-year-old me to 50-year-old me, and to be able to really embrace my culture and show everything that I remembered, like not be afraid of explaining what the altar is at home. You know, like when you're a kid, you're embarrassed to explain, yes, this is why there's a picture of my grandparents up and all this like incense in front. And now it's like, we've just visited 5 schools, and with each kid, it's like, I'm proudly telling them, this is what we had. You know, kids made fun of me, but it was really, really cool to have this at home. And you see just a completely different appreciation. That is amazing for me.
And it's also amazing that this isn't a book that's like, oh, you know, the difficult, horrible immigrant experience kind of book. It's actually a celebration, right? And there's this beautiful love story in it. And I'm so grateful that it's like that. And of course, I have one really important question left for you. I have to ask all my Asians this question. If you can eat only one of these for the rest of your life, which would you pick? Rice or noodles, and choose wisely.
Rice. Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
I've been asked this, and I've given answers. I flip-flopped on the answers. Right now, I would say rice.
Rice is the only correct answer. I am letting you all know this. All right. Good job, Jean. Okay, and in my last here, so I get to show. I am really bad about promoting my own book. But this is actually my next book that comes out January 23rd. Thank you. And I, too, want to petition for a collaboration to do a graphic novel. So this is me drawing for Jean. Okay? I think I can do a good job as an illustrator next. What do you think, Jean? Yeah? Yeah?
I think there's a lot of charisma in that.
Yeah.
There is.
I think dead is actually the best.
Yeah, there's a lot of charisma.
Okay, so I think now we're going to open up for questions. So please, if you could line up and ask away, this is your chance. 2 superstars in the house, come and chat with us. With them, chat with them, not me. Chat with them.
You too shy to get up?
Nobody? Yeah. Oh, yes.
Hi, this is so fun. Thank you. My name is Anna, and I was wondering, if you were not writing and illustrating, what would you be doing? What would you want to be doing?
Oh, what would I be doing?
Yeah, but that's for both. I guess all three.
Yeah. For me, I would be a high school teacher.
Okay.
I was a high school teacher before I became a full-time cartoonist, and I really loved that job.
Yeah.
And I have also thought about going back to teaching in some form. So I think
cool.
that's what I would do.
My parents, like, they had a job, a profession picked out for all of us. Doctor, engineer, like, so they never have to pay for professional services ever again. Like, that was their goal. I was supposed to be the lawyer, and I actually did go to UCLA for a couple of years and studied poli-sci. And I still feel the lawyer in me whenever there's like injustice in the world. So I like to think that's what I would have ended up doing. Not like a wealthy lawyer, not in a big house, probably like a poor civil rights lawyer or something, like barely making it, but that's probably what I'd like to do.
Well, I was the lawyer. My mom still asks me, when are you going to go back to being a lawyer? And my answer is never.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hello. I was just wondering, because you said you made and lettered this in 7 months, and I'm just curious, how on earth did you accomplish that?
Yeah, good question. Good question.
Did you sleep? Did you eat? Did you go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Do you have a drawing table in your bathroom? Is that how you do it?
So, okay. So I'll say this. I am really fast. And I'm not fast because I'm great. I'm fast because I'm not really afraid of making mistakes. Let's put it that way. So I will.
She's great. She's lying. She's great.
No.
Great.
But I will power through a bad drawing, and I just won't stop. Like, someone asked me if I ever have like an artist block, and I don't. And that's not because I don't question myself. It's because I won't let myself stop. Like, the minute you stop and the minute you think is the minute you get a little worried. And I want to say, when I left UCLA, when I started art school, that was when I decided I couldn't let fear run my life. It's going to sound super corny, but that's as close as I can possibly come to saying like it's true. I did the switch. I disappointed my parents. I disappointed everyone, but I got to art school and I felt the most like myself ever. So it meant whatever I was going to do, I was just going to commit to it. Like I started drawing always in pen, and I never erased anything, and I just kept all of my stupid mistakes, and it trained me to just go faster and faster and faster. So that's the big one. But the quick one is that on this particular book, I started using the iPad, and I swear, I do not recommend the iPad for like anyone too young, okay? If you're first starting, you do not draw on the iPad, draw on paper. But if you are an artist and you are starting to develop hand problems, or you want to get quicker to the problem that you want to work on, and it's not a technical problem, but an artistic problem, jumping on the iPad, it takes all of those technical issues away, and it helps immensely. And when I get into that flow of drawing, I can't stop. Like I just keep going. I go to bed and I dream about it. I wake up and I'm doing my coffee and I'm already sketching it. And I have the next problem figured out in my head as I'm working on the current problem. Like I can't stop. And for that particular story too, it was like, I think it was a chapter a week that I would send off to you sketch-wise.
Ridiculous. You know how ridiculous a chapter a week is? It's like almost inhuman. Like it's a mutant power. That's what I say. I say like drawing is something I do and I enjoy. Drawing for win is a mutant power.
It's great. But to get there and to have that feeling, like I said, it's like you reach that ether. You're trying to make something and you're trying to catch something. And I'm very aware as I age that not everybody gets to experience that. So I'm constantly like thankful for being in that space. And it's what I mean when I say I'm looking for collaborators, like someone who can go past that to stay in that space. And I can stay in that space for about 7 months and then I collapse totally. But it's great. It's an amazing place to be. It's an amazing place to be.
If you want to watch it happen, just later, either bring a book for her to sign or just watch her. And she's going to do it right here, like in about 20 minutes. Yeah.
So the moral for all the creators in the room is when you get writer's block, don't think.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Don't think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi.
What is your favorite thing you've worked on? Just like in all of you.
Oh, my favorite thing I've worked on?
That's like asking who's your favorite kid. You can't do that. You can answer.
I mean, I think it's always the current thing, right? Because I feel like you have to be a little bit in love with your current thing to get to the end. So my most recent thing is actually this book. Yeah.
No answer. I don't have a favorite. I mean, I don't want to say it, but yeah.
My favorite is this. It's not mine, but it's my favorite.
Thank you.
Hello. Hey. I was wondering if you could each channel one of your favorite characters in your book and give dating advice, what would it be?
Oh, what a
great question. Give dating advice as that character?
Yes.
Oh.
I got so many characters. Holy cow.
Wow.
I do picture books. They're not going to be dating in picture books.
They grow up.
Yeah. You have to
Vampirina, don't bite
you
people.
You have to do a grown-up version.
No, that's good advice. Don't bite people on the first date. It's actually a really good advice.
There you go. There you go. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, so a piece of dating advice that ended up in the book is, we have this character Uncle Yunsang, who's kind of like a mentor figure to some of the other characters, and then he talks about the dynamic between the yin and the yang, and some interpretations of the yin and yang are like it's a balance between being active and being passive, and I think that's actually really good dating advice. Like when you're in a romantic relationship, you have to have this balance of being active and being passive.
Thank you both. Also, if you have one, I mean, I would love to.
My advice is from this book called Lunar New Year, Love Story. Valentina is really protective of her heart. Almost, oh wait, I can't spoil it. Never mind, you have to read the book.
Good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jan. I love how there's so many more Asian authors and Asian American illustrators than all of you. What advice do you have now for Asian kids and their parents who still are thinking doctor, lawyer, engineer?
Stop it. This is a good question.
Wait, Gina and I just had a conversation about this.
Yeah.
The guy, the violin, and the polo player, and the
violin and the polo
Remember?
player. Oh yeah.
Tiger
We
Mom.
did.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
I do have to say this, my kids, all four of my kids, when they were young, they showed artistic inclinations, and because I'm a professional cartoonist, I've always tried to encourage them, you know. And my son really loved drawing as a kid. He still loves drawing now. He went to college. He went to this college that's sort of half art school and half tech school. And the reason why he chose it was because he was planning on doing something that was in the middle, like UX design, something that combined technology and art. And then after his freshman year, he calls me up and he's like, I really just want to do pure computer science. I don't want to do any of the art part. And I got so mad because I was like, you know how many Asian kids want me as their parent? You know what I mean? And you're going to do that? You're going to do that? And we had like this big fight about it. But he's just doing pure computer science. And then my daughter loved redesigning her room all the way through her childhood. And she wanted to be an interior designer. My sister-in-law is an interior designer, really, really successful. So we set up an internship with her. She was supposed to fly out this summer to go and intern with her. And then last year, she comes home and she goes, that's the last art class I'm ever going to take. I want to be a doctor. She said that. And then she announces it at Thanksgiving, and my dad like stands up and gives her a standing ovation, which was like so annoying, right? So I feel like when I try to actually give Asian kids advice to do that, they always do the exact opposite. You know? They always do the exact opposite.
It's kind of true. Like, I have two boys too, and man, when the first son was born, my husband's an artist, right? Like, they are born from the loins of two artists, right? And my first son, we named him Leo, thinking it was going to have all these artistic aspirations. That kid will not pick up a pencil for the life of him. Like, he grew up with colors and paints and everything all around, and we didn't pressure him. We didn't make him feel bad about anything. Didn't touch a thing. Grew up like glued to his computer screen. Like, at the age of a year and a half, I have him sitting in front of the Apple and like just mesmerized by it, right? Like by the screen. And I kept thinking like, okay, maybe that's just the way our kid is. But he grew up, and it wasn't until very recently that he told me, no, I knew from a really young age that my parents were really good and that I would never be as good as that. And that was all he said. And I know that hurts, right? So he's like, wants to go off and he wants to do cybersecurity. Any Asian parent in the world would be like, yeah. And I'm like, you sure you want to do that, really? It's just, you don't get to decide what your kid is going to become. It's very likely they don't want to do what you're going to be doing, especially if you're known for it in any way, especially if their friends can Google you. I make comic strips about them all the time, and they're always like, you can't do that. You can't put that up. My friends are watching you on that. So I you have to be really aware of all that stuff. But it doesn't matter. Like, you open the path. And I think the thing that matters is not that they go into the field you want them to. The thing that matters is that they go into the field that they want to, and you're not an obstruction. Yeah. And that is the most important thing, and that we're there for.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say my mom forced me to be pre-med through college, and it was the most miserable experience of my life, right? And I knew I couldn't be a doctor when I worked at the morgue, the city morgue in New York City. At that time, the doctor, his name was actually Dr. Gross. I swear to God, his name was Dr. Gross. And the first time I went to do my internship at the city morgue in New York City, they trapped me. Three people who worked, the staff members, trapped me in a corner with cadavers on the carts, and they left the carts there and me in the corner, and I couldn't look. They were all naked. I was like this the whole time. Help! Please help me. So I weeded myself out of pre-med, right? But my mom didn't believe me that and so like it was really rough. And then she didn't talk to me for a year, and I was living at home, and she talked. I actually still to this day can't figure out how she did it, but she didn't talk to me for a year when I switched, and I became a lawyer. And then it took a long time. And then my kid, so I'm married to a lawyer too. And then my kid said, I want to be a lawyer. And we were like, why? Don't do it. It's a bad idea. And she's at law school now. So, you kind of, I think the moral for me, and then I'll let Jean speak again, is you can't dictate what your kids want to do. You can only give them the best advice and you can give them the best support that you can. But they will find their passion, right? Even if it's law. Oh.
Well, you can dictate, but they're not going to be happy.
Well,
like, all other 4 brothers and sisters, they did exactly what my parents told them to do. And to this day, they go on and on about, like, you're so lucky you did what you wanted to do. Like, I'm the selfish one in the family, right? Because I actually did what I wanted to do. But my sister is a great doctor, and she's quite happy with her life. But she tells me constantly, I wish I'd been a writer. I'd always wanted to do it. And she just, I can see her from a distance. Like, I can feel the pain in her eyes, and I wish that she had done it, because it's just that sort of unfulfilled dream that just hangs over.
But it's not too late.
Yeah, I keep telling her that. I'm
Not
like,
too
you
late.
got a sister in the field, man. Come on, go for it. But at some point, the fear gets really, really loud in your head. Yeah.
I think there's also a way of taking seriously the wisdom of your parents without taking seriously their advice. Like the doctor, lawyer, engineer thing is about stability, and it's also about maybe responsibility. And there are ways of achieving stability and responsibility without going that route.
Jean, can you talk a little bit about your American-born Chinese adaptation experience?
Oh, sure. Sure. So American-Born Chinese was a graphic novel that I wrote and drew that was colored by a good friend of mine named Lark Pien that came out in 2006, so like 18 years ago. And recently, just this past year, it was adapted into a Disney Plus show. Thank you. It was super fun. Now, we did get some sad news recently that we didn't get renewed for a second season. But even so, man, I feel like that entire experience was so unexpected that it's hard for me to be too sad about it. Like I got to hang out on movie sets with Academy Award winners like Michelle Yeoh and Ki Kwan.
Ki Kwan, man,
Yeah,
so
it was so incredible. It was so incredible. And I also got this up close look at how creatives in another field worked, right? So if you've watched the show and you've read the book, you know that they're very different, and that was in part by design. Very early on, we decided we were gonna set the show now as opposed to in the vague 80s and 90s, which is when the book was set. And we also decided that it was gonna be a TV show rather than a movie. So the worlds needed to be bigger and fuller in order to accommodate a beginning, middle, and end for every single episode. And overall, I thought that the writing team did a great job, that they actually kept the heart of the book and just expressed it in a different way. So I mean, just like I am sad, of course, that we didn't get a season 2, but it's hard for me to be too sad because that whole experience was just so amazing. Oh, thank you.
Hi, Jordan.
Hi, Ellen. You had me in Florence cracking up over there. I was wondering just if you have books that are like guiding lights for you when you start this together, or just in general, if there's sort of things that that you're looking to for your larger inspiration before you start.
I have to say, like, it was actually my chance to like plug other books. One of my favorite illustrators and writers actually are Jillian and Marika Tamaki.
Yeah.
Like, I can't say enough about Jillian Tamaki's line. It's just, it's so perfect. And I remember her work when she was a student and loving her stuff. And I was already like a working professional, and she had just come out of art school. And I remember thinking, like, I'm going to follow this girl for forever. But they just did the book Roaming that came out. That's a great, great book. It's such like an intimate detail of friendship between three girls, essentially. And it's just so incredibly authentic. So you gotta pick that one up. There is a book, I think one of like my favorite Asian comic books that first came out was by Derek Kirkham. It's Same Difference. It's such a great non-story story. You know, like it's a quiet moment, and so much happens, even though very little happens. And that was like my childhood. I felt like there was a lot of things that happened that are momentous to you as an Asian person, but is unrippled. Like it goes about as an unrippled way. And I remember when I read that book feeling like, wow, that's amazing. And that came out a long time ago, and it meant a lot to me. So I think when you're talking about like looking at books, there's so many amazing artists out there, like so many people that I will put up and keep looking at, especially when I'm working on the book. And I am thrilled to say that there are so many female artists, because there was the longest time where I was just kind of searching for it. And now I feel like, God, there's this like generation behind us, maybe like 2 generations, that are fearless and are so good and do not understand the same limitations that we had. Like Gen X, we're in between our parents' generation and the new generation that is fearless and knows nothing but fear. And we've got like a foot in each one of those, and it makes it harder for us. But we're still pushing kind of boundaries. And I love that the generation behind us doesn't even understand that there are boundaries there. So it means like wherever I came from, my parents, that's how much further the next generation is going to come. And there's so many out there. So
Yeah, there's some great books out there. I really love the Tamaki cousins as well. Mariko Tamaki has a book called Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which is, it's a high school book, and the way in which she creates every single character, I think, is really inspiring. Even the secondary characters, it's really incredible. I really love Jason Shiga as well. He I think is a genius. And I have a friend named Tin Pham who recently put out a book called Family Style.
I love that book.
Yeah, that's from First Second Books as well. And then there's a book by T. Bui called The Best We Could Do, I think, is also incredible.
That one took me 2 years to read it. Like it sat by my bedside. I could not bring myself. Yeah.
I get that. Yeah, it's
Victoria Ying's book, Hungry.
Yeah, Hungry Ghosts is great
Such
as well.
a great
Yeah,
book, too.
yeah, Hungry Ghosts is a great book.
One of my favorite graphic novels is also The Magic Fish.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that book is so beautiful.
Yeah, it's shocking that was his first book.
Oh, I know.
He looks so accomplished in that book. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Can either of you talk about what's next and what you're working on now?
Well, I'm working on a middle grade series right now that's tonally completely different from Lunar New Year Love Story. It's based on a video game, a very popular video game called Clash of Clans. It's called Books of Clash. The first 2 volumes are out already, and then we have 2 more volumes coming out this year. If you're a Clash player, you'll know what I'm talking about. But every book focuses on a different character. So we started with Hog Rider, and then we moved on to archers, and then this year we're doing golems and Valkyries.
Okay. I'm a picture book person, right? So I've got a lot of picture books coming out. There's one that I just recently did that I kind of want you guys to keep an eye out for. It's called The Man Who Didn't Like Animals. And I know it's like, I want you to be intrigued by the title, and I want you to really, really go read this book, because it is about a man who doesn't like animals and his metamorphosis at the end of it, and a little bit of a surprise at the end. There's a book I'm signed up to do, and I can't talk too much about it, but let's just say I've been bitten by the graphic novel bug, and I'm feeling a lot braver about telling some of those stories. And it is another romance, but like a dramatic kind of tragic romance. And it's based on the Greek play, although it's a modern story, of Euripides and what is it, the lute player? Euripides and the story of the lute player whose wife dies and he goes to Orpheus and Euripides, yeah. Yeah, Eurydice, I'm sorry. And he goes down to Hades to try to bring her back to life, and Hades says, he plays the lute so beautifully that Hades says, you can take her, but only if you promise not to turn around, and she'll follow you up, and if she turns around, she'll be gone. And he gets all the way to the edge of the underworld, and he can't stop himself, and he turns, and she gets swept back. So it's a love story based on that, and it's phenomenally written. And it's written by a woman, and I can't say who, but it's a phenomenally written story. So I'm really excited about starting that one.
So cool.
Yeah. Sorry?
Publisher.
Oh, for a second. Yeah.
So I was going to ask if you'd gotten the comics bug. So I won't ask that, but love the Jason Shiga shout. He's amazing.
Yeah.
I guess I would ask, I think this is the first collaboration I think you've done. Is it something that you would sort of see again on a project by project basis that you like? Did you enjoy? This seems like the most special. The history behind it obviously is so important, but just generally, did you enjoy collaborating with an artist?
It was super fun. I have collaborated with a couple of other artists. I did Shadow Hero with Sunny Liu, and then I've also done some work for the big two superhero publishers with other artists as well. I do think that I've been really lucky. I've worked with a lot of really, really talented, amazing artists that have been able to pull off stories that I could not pull off as an artist. But of all the collaborations, I think Luen probably did the most writing. There are whole scenes in the book that she wrote, and I thought, in part because of that, I felt like it was just there was something very satisfying about this collaboration.
And you guys will see the Jean leaked version online, and then tell me what you think of the two, because I'm just dying for people to see that one.
We're going to take one last question, and then we're going to transition to our signing line.
Hey, just in the shout outs to flashbacks, Templar. You've been doing graphic novels for a while, actually. And I actually was always curious how that project came about. Because it was it's another monumental graphic novel that I saw.
Yeah, it's 700 pages, something like that. Templar was a book that was done with me and my husband. So my husband, Alex, is also an illustrator and graphic novelist. He might be doing something with Jean, right? Yeah. But way back when I was pregnant with my second kid, Jordan Mechner, who's the creator of Prince of Persia, the video game, he was a friend of ours. So we'd worked on his first book, the Prince of Persia, the graphic novel adaptation. We were given 5 months to do that book. I was pregnant, so I had to finish the book even sooner than that, before the baby was delivered. And that was almost a 300-page book. So my husband and I worked on it, and afterwards we're never again are we working together. But it was really good training for having a baby. Perfect training for it. We learned to talk to each other. We learned to compromise. We learned to let go of our own egos and see what was good for the baby, not good for ourselves. And so Jordan came to us and said, I have got this idea for this big book deal. And he showed it to us, and it was about the Templar Knights. And my husband's French, so he's a sucker for that history. And it was kind of a romance, so I'm a sucker for that. But it wasn't a great romance, I gotta say. There was parts of it that I wish had been done better, and he would not accept my female voice at all, unfortunately. But we went through that whole book together, and it took, I was pregnant with my second kid, and I finished it before the second kid was born too. It was a massive endeavor. It was a really, really big endeavor, and my husband and I both did the sketches together. We both did the character designs together. He worked mostly on the action scenes because he's better with action, and I'm better with the emotional scenes. So I could sort of cut my teeth on that. But I remember after doing that book, it was so hard that I told myself, I can't do this. I can't do this by myself. I can't do a graphic novel on my own. And I really had written off graphic novels thinking, never going to do this again, until Shannon Hale came along with the Real Friends series. And Shannon sent the story over, and it was her story, but it was something that had happened to me too. I think a lot of girls felt that about that book. And I was terrified to do it. That book I was terrified to do. But once I got through that, it's like your heart breaks, you can never break it again. You can't get so scared again after you do a book like that. And I didn't quite get bitten by the bug, but I wanted to keep up that story. And I kept thinking that after that was over, I was never going to do it again. Until Jean sends me his book. And now I think I'm officially bitten. I will still keep doing picture books for sure, but yeah. Jean converts a lot of people, man.
I want to do a graphic novel with you.
Please!
Can it be really scary? A lot of death and destruction.
I so want to do a scary book.
Yes, okay.
Toe down with that.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much to Ellen and Wynn and Jean. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, thank you for hosting us.
It was a pleasure. And thank you just for sharing your life stories and the laughs. It was just a perfect evening. So thank you so much.